You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. And, as always, I apologize for all of my Hebrew pronunciation. I know I'm going to pronounce Hebrew words wrong, so instead of getting annoyed, I give you permission to laugh at how I say things. Today's topic is the Spanish Inquisition. And yes, the mere phrase makes most people either shiver or shout. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition, thanks to Monty Python. But while comedy sketches make it sound goofy, the real history was anything but funny. This was a state-backed religious tribunal that caused centuries of fear, forced conversions, and expulsions. It's one of those moments in Jewish history where you want to grab a giant, "This is not okay," sign and wave it at the entire country of Spain. So let's dive into why it started, what happened, and why Jews became the primary targets. The Spanish Inquisition officially began in 1478, and its architects were Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile. Yes, the same royal couple who funded Christopher Columbus in 1492. But before they were launching ships westward, they were launching a religious campaign inward. The idea was to unify Spain under Catholicism. Jews had been in the Iberian Peninsula for over 1,000 years, thriving in science, medicine, poetry, and even politics. But Christian leaders worried about religious purity. Many Jews had already been pressured to convert to Christianity in the 14th and 15th centuries after violent anti-Jewish riots. These converts were called conversos, or new Christians. The problem? Some conversos were suspected of secretly practicing Judaism, and once paranoia kicks in, logic goes out the window. Ferdinand and Isabella asked the Pope for permission to create a special court to sniff out these supposed secret Jews. Spoiler alert, it didn't exactly involve polite questioning and a cappuccino. At the heart of the Inquisition was suspicion that conversos weren't real Christians. Did someone light candles on Friday night? Did they avoid pork? Congratulations, you might be accused of Judaizing. And once you were accused, it was game over. The trials were stacked against the defendant. Witnesses could remain anonymous, hearsay counted as evidence, and confessions were often extracted under torture. The classic image of the Inquisition involves racks, iron maidens, and scary dungeons. And while Hollywood exaggerates, the truth was bad enough. People were paraded through public ceremonies called autos de fe, acts of faith, where they were punished, humiliated, and sometimes executed, usually by burning. Imagine being dragged in front of your entire town while someone reads a list of crimes that boil down to lit Shabbat candles, and then you're sentenced to die. It was terror mixed with theater, and Jews, both practicing and suspected, were right in the middle of it. In 1492, the Inquisition hit its climax with the Alhambra Decree. This edict ordered all Jews in Spain who refused baptism to leave the country. Imagine being told, convert or pack up your entire life and go. And this wasn't just a casual move. Families had to abandon homes, businesses, books, and property, often selling them for pennies or just losing them outright. Some estimates say around 200,000 Jews lived in Spain at the time, and about half left. They scattered to places like Portugal, North Africa, the Ottoman Empire, and later the Netherlands and the Americas. The Sephardic Jewish community, Sepharad meaning Spain in Hebrew, was forever changed. Those who stayed behind and converted lived under constant suspicion. Those who left carried with them Ladino, a Judeo-Spanish language, along with their traditions. It was one of the most traumatic displacements in Jewish history, comparable in its day to the Babylonian exile. The irony of the Spanish Inquisition is that Spain lost some of its most talented people. Jews had been physicians, scholars, financiers, and translators. Their expulsion weakened Spain's intellectual and economic power, even as Spain bragged about religious unity. Meanwhile, other countries benefited. The Ottoman Sultan reportedly said, "You call Ferdinand a wise king. He impoverishes his own land and enriches mine." That's basically the 15th century version of saying, "Thanks for sending me your best talent, Spain." And Jewish refugees didn't just disappear. They rebuilt. They founded communities in Salonika, Istanbul, Amsterdam, and even in the New World. They brought with them rich traditions of poetry, music, and law. So while the Inquisition tried to snuff out Jewish life, it ended up spreading Sephardic culture around the globe. Spanish rulers may have thought they were protecting their faith, but really, they were fueling a Jewish diaspora renaissance elsewhere. It's important to note that the Inquisition wasn't only about Jews. It also targeted Muslims, Protestants, and anyone who didn't quite fit the Catholic mold. But Jews were the primary scapegoat. And this paranoia didn't just vanish after the 15th century. The Inquisition continued for centuries, officially lasting until 1834 in Spain. That means this wasn't just a short burst of religious zeal. Generations grew up under its shadow. Imagine knowing your grandchildren's grandchildren could still be at risk of being investigated for what food you ate. And for Jews, even those who had fled, the trauma lingered. The stories of expulsion and persecution were passed down like family heirlooms. Remember what Spain did to us? It shaped Jewish identity in exile, creating a sense of both loss and resilience. So the Inquisition wasn't just an event, it became part of the collective Jewish memory. Culturally, the Spanish Inquisition left behind a strange legacy. On the one hand, it's remembered as one of the darkest chapters in Jewish history, a time of fear, violence, and exile. On the other hand, it sparked creativity in exile. Ladino songs, Sephardic liturgy, and folklore blossomed in new lands. Jews learned to adapt, building strong, tight-knit communities because they had to rely on each other. It's like being kicked out of the coolest club in town, only to open your own club across the street with better music and snacks. And this cultural resilience is something Jews have repeated over and over in history. Turn persecution into perseverance. So while the Spanish Inquisition tried to erase Judaism, what it really did was amplify Jewish identity, forcing it into new directions that still echo today. You might be wondering, did Spain ever apologize? Sort of. In 1992, 500 years after the expulsion, Spain formally revoked the Alhambra Decree. Then in 2015, Spain even offered citizenship to descendants of Sephardic Jews expelled in 1492. That's a long time to wait for an apology gift. But hey, it's something. Thousands of Jews applied, reclaiming a piece of their heritage. It shows how deep the connection runs. Even centuries later, Sephardic Jews felt tied to the land of their ancestors. And Spain, in a symbolic way, admitted, we really messed up. But the scars of the Inquisition remain. It's a reminder that forced uniformity rarely works out, and that diversity is actually a strength. The fact that Ladino songs and Sephardic recipes still exist today proves that culture can outlive oppression, sometimes more vibrantly than before. So what can we learn from the Spanish Inquisition? First, paranoia makes bad policy. Accusing people based on rumors and forcing conversions doesn't create unity. It just spreads trauma. Second, diversity is valuable. Spain's loss became the Ottoman Empire's gain. And third, Jewish resilience is remarkable. Despite being expelled, tortured, and scattered, Sephardic Jews thrived, preserving their language, rituals, and stories. The Inquisition is one of those cautionary tales you'd expect to read in a How Not to Run a Country manual. And yet, it also becomes a story of Jewish survival. If you ever hear Ladino music or eat Sephardic burekas, you're tasting the survival of a community that Spain tried to erase. That's resilience you can snack on. So, the Spanish Inquisition was brutal, but it also accidentally launched one of the most influential Jewish diasporas. That's the story of the Spanish Inquisition. Scary, tragic, but also filled with lessons about resilience and survival. If history had Yelp reviews, Jews would give 1492 Spain a 1-star rating. Would not recommend forced conversion, terrible hospitality. But Jewish life moved on, stronger and more creative than ever. And that's the pattern we see again and again. Persecution followed by renewal. Thanks for listening to this episode of Everything Jewish, 10 minutes at a time. If you enjoyed it, share it with a friend, maybe while eating some Sephardic pastries. Next time, we'll tackle another topic from the endless buffet of Jewish history and culture. Until then, remember that history can be dark, but Jewish humor and resilience keep the lights on. And yes, once again, I apologize for my Hebrew pronunciation. At least with the Spanish Inquisition, I can mispronounce auto da fe, and you'll forgive me. See you next time.